Welcome to House of Horrors, where true stories and unexplained events come alive. From the silent deserts of New Mexico, abandoned towns, and forgotten roads, these are real horror cases that still have no answers. Tonight's story is one of them. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where you are watching from, and what time it is there right now. Turn off the lights. Turn up the volume. And step inside. The House of Horrors. New Mexico's deserts are vast, silent, and unforgiving. Miles of open land stretch beneath endless skies, where help is often far away and footsteps disappear quickly. Over the years, travelers, workers, and locals have reported disturbing incidents deep in these deserts. Events that were never fully explained. Events that were never meant to be found. Tonight, we'll examine 5 true horror cases from the deserts of New Mexico. These are not legends or folklore. They are real incidents that left behind fear, unanswered questions, and no clear explanations. The missing survey team. Jornada del Muerto Desert. The Jornada del Muerto Desert is one of the most remote regions in New Mexico. Its name translates to Journey of the Dead, a title earned centuries ago due to how many travelers never made it across. Even today, large sections of the desert remain untouched, with no cell service, few roads, and extreme temperatures. In early 2016, a private land survey company sent a 3-person team to map a section of land scheduled for future development. The assignment was routine. The team was experienced, well-equipped, and familiar with desert conditions. They carried GPS units, satellite radios, emergency beacons, and enough supplies to last over a week. For the first 2 days, everything went according to plan. The team checked in at scheduled times, transmitted coordinates, and reported no issues. Weather conditions were stable, and there were no alerts or warnings. On the 3rd day, the morning check-in never came. At first, the company assumed a technical issue. Satellite interference was common in that area. But by evening, concern grew. Repeated attempts to contact the team failed. No emergency signal was triggered. A search operation began 48 hours later. Rescue teams located the survey vehicle using the last transmitted coordinates. It was parked neatly on flat ground, not damaged, not stuck. The fuel tank was nearly full. The keys were still in the ignition. Nearby, the team's campsite was discovered. Tents were standing upright. Equipment had been organized carefully. Food supplies were untouched. Water containers were full. Nothing suggested panic or a sudden emergency. It looked as if the team had simply stepped away. Investigators noticed footprints in the sand leading away from the camp. 3 distinct sets. They followed the prints for roughly 50 yards. Then they stopped. There were no return tracks. No signs of struggle. No marks indicating anyone had fallen, been dragged, or changed direction. The sand beyond the final footprints was smooth and undisturbed. Despite extensive aerial searches, ground sweeps, and thermal imaging, no trace of the 3 surveyors was ever found. No personal belongings surfaced. No remains were recovered. To this day, no explanation exists. The emergency beacons were never activated. The radios were functional. Weather records show no sudden event capable of forcing them to flee. In a desert where survival depends on preparation, the most disturbing detail remains the same. They left everything behind. The night lights near Carrizozo. The desert outside Carrizozo, New Mexico, is known for its open land and long, empty nights. After sunset, the area becomes unusually quiet. There are no major highways nearby, very few buildings, and almost no artificial light. Locals are accustomed to darkness, but some have reported lights that do not belong to aircraft, vehicles, or nearby towns. For years, these reports were dismissed as distant planes or reflections. That changed in 2018, when a freelance photographer decided to investigate the sightings for himself. He arrived just before midnight, parking his vehicle several miles from the nearest paved road. The night was clear, with no wind and excellent visibility. He set up a tripod and began filming the horizon, expecting nothing more than stars and passing satellites. Approximately 40 minutes into recording, a faint glow appeared low to the ground. Then another. Then a third. The lights hovered just above the desert floor, spaced evenly apart. They were dim at first, then gradually brightened. They made no sound and cast no visible beams. The photographer adjusted his camera settings, attempting to focus, but the image kept drifting out of clarity. As the lights began to move, the camera's behavior became erratic. Autofocus activated on its own. The frame tilted slightly despite the tripod being stable. The audio track cut in and out, replaced by brief bursts of static. The lights did not move like vehicles. They drifted slowly, then stopped, then changed direction without turning. After several minutes, they began moving toward the photographer's position. Uneasy, he stepped back from the camera. Without warning, the lights surged forward at high speed and vanished completely. The desert returned to total darkness. The camera shut off moments later. The photographer left the area immediately. When he reviewed the footage the next day, the recording ended earlier than he remembered. The final visible frame showed something he could not explain. A tall, narrow shadow stood directly behind him. The shadow had no visible source. There was nothing nearby that could have cast it. The photographer insists that when he turned around that night, there was nothing there. He never returned to the site. Locals near Carrizozo still report the lights. They appear sporadically, always late at night, always low to the ground. No official explanation has ever been given. The desert collar near Deming. The desert south of Deming, New Mexico, is heavily monitored due to its proximity to the border. Large stretches of land are patrolled nightly by Border Patrol agents using radios, vehicles, and ground sensors. Communication is critical in these areas, especially after dark, when visibility drops and distances become deceptive. In early 2020, several patrol units began reporting unusual radio interference during night shifts. At first, it sounded like normal static, something agents were used to. But soon, the interference became more specific. A voice began breaking through the static. The voice was calm and slow, cutting in between transmissions. It called agents by name and used correct unit call signs. The tone was flat, almost rehearsed. When agents attempted to respond, the transmission stopped immediately, leaving only silence. At first, supervisors suspected someone was interfering with the radio channels. Equipment was checked. Frequencies were changed. Nothing explained how the voice knew the agents' names or locations. One night, a two-vehicle patrol picked up the transmission again. This time, the voice repeated a single phrase, directing them toward an unmarked area several miles off their normal route. Against protocol, the units followed the signal, attempting to trace its source. As they moved deeper into the desert, both radios went silent. The agents later reported that time felt distorted during that period. According to vehicle logs, nearly 3 hours passed with no recorded communication. When contact was restored, the agents were found parked in an area they could not identify on their maps. Neither agent could explain what happened during the missing time. Audio recordings from the radios were reviewed later. The voice was present on the tape, clear and isolated. Analysts confirmed it did not match any known personnel. The signal strength also suggested the transmission was coming from multiple locations at once. After the incident, similar reports continued briefly, then stopped altogether. No further transmissions were recorded. Officially, the cause was listed as unexplained interference. Privately, agents stationed near Deming still avoid certain channels at night. Some claim that occasionally, during moments of heavy static, a familiar voice can still be heard trying to break through. Calling their name, the unclaimed camp plains of San Agustin. The plains of San Agustin are vast, flat, and eerily quiet. Stretching for miles in western New Mexico, the area feels empty even during the day. At night, the darkness settles heavily, and sound carries farther than expected. It is not a place where people accidentally wander without preparation. In the summer of 2015, two hikers exploring a remote section of the plains came across a campsite that immediately felt wrong. The tents were still standing, though clearly weathered by sun and wind. The area showed no signs of recent activity, yet nothing appeared damaged or looted. Inside one tent, they found folded clothing placed neatly on the ground. Food supplies were sealed and untouched. Cooking equipment was arranged as if someone intended to return at any moment. There was no trash, no fire damage, and no footprints leading away from the site. What disturbed the hikers most was a small notebook lying near the sleeping area. The journal entries were brief but precise. Early pages described normal travel notes, weather observations, and route planning. Then the tone changed. One entry mentioned hearing footsteps outside the tent at night. Another described the sound moving slowly in circles, never approaching, never retreating. The final entry was dated 3 nights after the first mention of the sounds. It read, "It's closer now, but I still can't see it." There were no more entries. Authorities were notified, and a search was conducted across the surrounding plains. No missing persons reports matched the campsite. No vehicles were located on nearby roads. Aerial searches found nothing. The campsite itself offered no clues about how many people had been there or when they had disappeared. Investigators noted the lack of tracks in the area. The soil around the camp was firm enough to hold footprints, yet none were visible beyond the immediate site. It was as if the occupants had not left by walking. The campsite was eventually dismantled by authorities. The journal was archived, and the case was closed without explanation. To this day, no one has come forward to claim the camp or the belongings found there. Locals familiar with the plains say the area has a way of hiding things. Not by burying them, but by leaving behind no evidence that they were ever meant to leave at all. The Desert Silence event near the Arizona border. In the summer of 2019, a group of 4 off-road enthusiasts decided to explore a remote desert basin near the New Mexico-Arizona border. They were experienced drivers, familiar with harsh desert conditions, and carried radios, GPS devices, and ample supplies. The area was isolated, with no nearby towns, no cell service, and very few other travelers. Even in broad daylight, the desert could feel oppressive. At night, it became something entirely different. The group started their journey in the late afternoon, navigating sand dunes and narrow washes. The desert stretched endlessly on all sides, under a sky that gradually darkened to deep indigo. As they drove, the only sounds were the engines, the tires crunching over sand, and occasional wind blowing faintly through the basin. Around midnight, they entered a particularly wide and flat stretch of desert. It was a place they had traversed before, but that night, everything felt heavier. The air seemed to press in on them. Then, abruptly, all sound disappeared. At first, they thought it was a malfunction. Radios were dead. The engines sounded like they had stopped running, even though the vehicles were still moving. The drivers yelled to each other, but no voice was heard. Not one word. Not even a whisper. Their shouts were visible, lips moving, mouths opening, but nothing reached their ears. The silence lasted for several minutes. During that time, every member of the group reported the same strange sensations. Their hearing seemed distorted, as though the air itself had weight. Their hearts raced. Eyes darted constantly. And most unsettling of all, each felt an undeniable sense of being watched. The desert, empty and vast as it was, suddenly seemed alive. Then, a single vehicle dash camera captured something even stranger. In the silent footage, a dark shape moved between the vehicles. It appeared elongated and distorted, almost stretching across the sand, but no one in the group saw it in real time. The shape moved deliberately, weaving slowly around their positions, then disappeared. When sound suddenly returned, engines roared back to life. Radio static filled the channels again. The desert seemed ordinary. The night sky looked normal. Yet, each of the drivers could not shake the feeling that they had been observed the entire time. In the days that followed, the footage was reviewed repeatedly. Analysts could not identify the shape. It appeared as a shadow that had no source. There were no tracks in the sand. The wind had not shifted the dunes. And yet, the shape had moved. None of the drivers were harmed. No equipment failed. And yet, they all agreed on one point: something unexplainable had been present. Something in the desert had entered the space around them, observed them silently, and left no trace. The event became known locally as the Desert Silence event. Residents and travelers in the area began reporting other strange occurrences: lights that moved without sound, sudden pressure in the air, and fleeting shadows on the dunes, but the silence of that night remained the most disturbing. No official explanation was ever provided. Scientists dismissed it as a psychological reaction to isolation and darkness. Locals warned outsiders to avoid the basin at night. But for those 4 drivers, the memory remained vivid. Even now, when the wind blows over the desert dunes near the border, some say it carries a faint echo of that silence. The desert, they learned, does not forgive curiosity. And sometimes, in the middle of nowhere, it watches, and waits. So guys, thanks for watching House of Horrors. If you enjoyed this descent into darkness, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell, so you never miss another nightmare. Signing off.